Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Miss Esquire podcast. I always love starting off by explaining a little bit about what Miss Esquire really is. It's a network full of women attorneys, over 11,000 people in our community, but it's also expanded and grown to more than just women attorneys. We have business professionals throughout the country. And what's really incredible is to see people connect in a community and also grow and scale their business.
The Miss Esquire podcast is going to feature both attorney and non-attorney chapter members to talk about tips and tricks of growing your business.
Yeah, and if you want to get more information about how you can take that next leap and step in your business and join us, you can email us at admin@missesquire.com. And we always like to thank our two incredible sponsors for allowing us to do this podcast. The first one is Littler, which is a law firm that is global. It is actually the largest law firm worldwide that handles employment and labor law. And one of our incredible members who's with us today is a shareholder in the Miami office. Her name is Sherril Colombo, and we're excited to feature her. And we also have another member in our Fort Lauderdale chapter. Her name is Rocio Garcia, and she's incredible as well.
Our other sponsor is Professional Interpreting Associates, and they provide interpreting and translation services across a wide range of businesses. They're known for their accurate, precise, and timely services. The owner is Pat Gutierrez, who's a member of our Fort Lauderdale 2 and West Broward chapters.
Yeah.
So today, we already did a little brief introduction, but I wanted to introduce and thank Sherril Colombo for being here. She is a member of our Miami 2 chapter. She's been a lawyer for over 30 years. We've been in the same circles for so long, so I'm just so pleased to have you here today.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're excited. And Sherril, just so you know, I always like starting every single podcast with asking the same question because it is a business podcast. And what I like touching on is I had a conversation with my dad and my brother, just so you know, and he mentioned to me one time, he said the overnight success really takes 30 years. It didn't just happen overnight. So what do you think is one seed that you planted early on in your career that got you to where you are today?
I would say that if I had to narrow it to one seed, is that I had a good mentor.
I love that.
And I had somebody that I worked with for 17 years.
Oh, okay.
And it is a he. And he was very supportive of my career. And I went to 4 different law firms with him. And he promoted me at every single law firm. And I worked hard, for him and with him, and did my first trial with him. So I think it's really about finding a good mentor.
Yeah, that's great.
For those who are looking to be a mentor to other people, what did he do that helped you? Did he give you more opportunity, push you beyond your comfort levels? Can you give some sort of examples of, what his mentorship meant to you?
He was always available. So anytime I would have a question, I could ask him, and he would be available for me. It may not be his case because I'm working with different partners in the office. So that's one thing. He also would include me very early on client conversations and communications and meetings. He also let me very early take depositions, handle hearings, but he always went with me. Yeah. So it wasn't one of those, swimmer sink?
Right. Yeah. I don't know the terminology, which is scary.
I was going to say it opposite for some reason, sink or swim. But anyway, he was always there with me, though. So we sat in on like my first deposition, and I still remember him saying it just seems like there's an easier way to get those documents in front of the witness.
Yeah,
it's very complicated the way I do it. But even then, he was very supportive. And so I would say those things really, I felt like I was part of the team.
I love that you were, it's not, Trisha's the only other person that I know that has been at the same firm or has stayed a really long time. Mm-hmm. It's hard nowadays to even find people that stay in any kind of job for more than 2 years. I feel like everyone's kind of like jumping around. So it says something about the person you worked for sure, but also something about you. I think it's good to let people like put in the seeds and get to grow with the experience and gain the experience and not like give up. Because I think nowadays, I don't know if you feel this way, but I find very often that people like they get upset over one thing and then they're gone. Like they don't stay in,
Yeah.
to break long enough.
Well, I mean, if you have a connection with someone you work with, I do always try and mentor. And, I try the same. I mean, what I was taught, I pass that.
That's great.
Pass that forward. And so I do have some people that call me up and, ask me a question about a case that is not mine. And, I don't feel annoyed by that. I'm like honored that they'd want, that they're looking for help. And, what would you do in this situation with the, deposition topics? I got 111 of them.
Wow.
That was Friday's call. Like what? 111 topics?
Wow.
You're moving for a protective order. Should I? Well, that was the reason I was calling. So, to me, it goes back to, I feel privileged to that someone would want a younger associate, newer associate would want my advice. And I'm always glad to help.
That's awesome. So obviously most of our chapters, they're business owners or they're comprised of attorneys. And one of the things that when I started my own practice, I feel like you don't know what you don't know. So obviously I do real estate transaction. I'm not an employment guru by any stretch of the imagination, which is funny explaining to non-attorneys how we don't all do the same thing and we're not good at what we don't practice.
Right.
When I first started my firm, I had a lot of employment questions, including how do I employ everybody? Like, are they 1099s? Are they W-2s? Are they salary versus hourly? So I think I wanted to start off at like basic question that I think most business owners have. And what does it distinguish your category for different types of employees and who actually can qualify as a 1099? Because I think a lot of people say they have 1099s, but they really don't. They have an employee. So there's a lot of that happening every time I have conversations with different business owners. So I don't know if you want to go into that.
I'll dive in there. So there's a lot of litigation around that too, not to scare anybody. But I say that because it's important to try and get that right.
Right.
So just because someone is salaried, for example, doesn't mean they're exempt from overtime.
That's
right. So
a big topic.
Or minimum wage. So that's an issue that I think some employers run up against, especially if you don't have an HR person that is schooled in how to assist the employer as to these pocket areas. But so if somebody is let's say on a salary, but they're not supervising anybody, I'll take a paralegal for example.
Yeah.
Most paralegals, if not all, but most paralegals, let's just say, are not exempt from overtime. So they would qualify under the salary test. They'd probably qualify under the compensation test, as there's a certain limit in compensation. However, they're not in the learned profession exemption. They're also typically not supervising two or more employees. They're not using their discretion. They actually work. I mean, there is some discretion, but they actually work subject to
an attorney,
the attorneys, review and guidance. So years ago, there were lawsuits regarding paralegals. That's why I bring that up, and just because we're in the legal profession. So just because of salary, again, and just because of a certain compensation level does not make somebody exempt. Then it also depends on the job duties. So if you're highly compensated, that's an exemption. If you're in sales, that's an exemption. So there's certain pocket exemptions.
Yeah.
Legal obviously is an exemption. But if we're talking just, about a person employed at a business, and they get a salary, they have a certain amount of discretion, they still may not be exempt. And so those are called the white collar exemptions.
Yeah.
And so you really need to know those. And what I see sometimes is our smaller clients will make somebody exempt. They just think that they're exempt and they're not. And so the problem that you have with that is that if that employee decides that they want to go after you for overtime, and then often there's not records kept as well as what would be expected, right? So then you get into record keeping issues and how long you keep the records. So a true independent contractor, so if we're like kind of move from exemptions out to like an independent contractor situation, That really depends on a host of factors, and it's the one issue that it boils down to is control. So who has control in that relationship?
Right.
So you think about if you hire someone to paint your house, you wouldn't think of them as your employee. You'd think of
Right.
them as an independent contractor. But then, like, you run into areas where it's kind of blended, right? The employer may provide the car, or
Right.
you have to show up at the office, between, hours X and hours Y. The employer provides the tools. And now you're starting to get into a blended situation here. Is this person really an independent contractor or not? I mean, we had a case recently involving cable installers. And so they go into, people's homes or businesses, and they install cable. The tools are provided by their employer. But are they independent contractors or not? I mean, so, are they
This is when
acting?
they need to hire you.
Yeah. So, they don't use their own
Right.
car, and they have a certain amount
They
of
don't set their hours.
jobs that they have to do per
Right.
day.
Right.
And then those, somebody can come in and check, do you have internet? I mean, the signal's not good. So, yeah, are they getting reviewed? Do they have a supervisor? Do they take vacation? So there's so many different factors, and it does become blurred. So it is best to make sure you have a good HR person or legal counsel. And there's a lot available on the internet too. I know at Littler we have, we give to our clients this platform where they can look themselves, and they could put in the job duties even.
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
yeah, it's called Littler Edge. So they can put in the job duties, and it'll let you know, just based on the case law, if there's a high risk, medium risk, low risk.
What did you say it was called?
Littler Edge.
Oh, Littler Edge. Okay.
Yeah, it's one
So,
of our platforms.
A lot of our Miss Esquire members are small business or even like pure solo. If they're looking to hire, does Littler handle smaller businesses, or what's the business model? Is it only like larger companies that can use Littler?
Oh, no, we have a lot of smaller business owners. A lot of them have EPLI too, which is Employer Practices Liability Insurance.
Okay.
So, we're on some
insurance.
panels.
I don't know how many insurances I.
So we're on some panels there too, where we'll run into smaller employers. But, I represent someone now. I mean, there's maybe, I don't know, like 7, 8 employees.
Okay.
So, yeah, under wage and hour laws, for example, you only need really 2.
Oh.
2 employees and $500,000, in interstate commerce, and you can get hit. So a lot of small employers get hit with those cases. But yes, we represent small, medium, large.
Okay.
Awesome. So I wanted to talk about a hot topic right now that's going on everywhere. I feel like every news station that you turn to, people are having a conversation about DEI, right? Especially with this administration and them rolling back a lot of the initiatives on DEI and how it pertains to the workplace. There's so many people that have questions on who does it really affect? What do you need to do as an employer? I actually was watching a study on what some of the companies that went full force in like getting rid of DEI, right? And some of their initiatives. And Target is one of the examples that I don't know if you saw this on the news or this study, but anyways, Target, she's like, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
This is like things that interest her, right? So I feel like maybe that would make sense. But anyways, Target was one of the companies that was like, yeah, we're absolutely going to get roll back on DEI. And people were upset about it, right? So they actually lost 4%, in terms of like gross revenue in their first quarter because of rolling back DEI programs. So as a business owner, I feel like this is a question that's coming up a lot. What actually took place? How does it affect business owners? And what have you seen? What's like the common questions that people are asking you in terms of DEI?
So that is a very good question. That's yes, that is a hot button topic, and there's a lot to unpack there. So we just actually did a survey of our clients to see what they are doing, and
Okay.
most are not changing a thing.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason being is that DEI tends to be popular with employees, and it helps with talent retention,
Right.
talent acquisition. And so in employees, if you have a DEI program, I mean, they're used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective alone, clients, I think, have decided not to, or to take more of a wait and see. The smaller percentage of clients who responded to the survey took out their DEI programs. And, could be they have government contracts, there could be other reasons for it.
Right.
But I do think there's been some backlash for those that have completely taken out their DEI programs. And there's other ways to have a diverse and, equity and inclusion, type of business. You don't have to call it DEI either.
I was just going to say that, I mean, for as long as you've been practicing, you've probably seen it really like switch, because there's a time when people and companies were proud to have the DEI, and now it's kind of like they have to almost like hide it.
Yeah.
So have you seen the big change?
Well, everything's kind of up in the air right now, right? And then you have the EEOC taking a look at
how it affects the
at
law.
Private employers. Yes, at private, do you have a DEI program? And the justification, I think, is that they're looking at it for reverse discrimination, disparate impact types of cases, categorizing people, based on a protected characteristic. And so I would say, though, that you can do DEI in practice,
right,
as well.
Right.
If you're looking for more diverse applicants, where do you interview? I mean, there's certain steps that you can take where you let your employees know that you are not changing who you're hiring or how you're hiring. Maybe you just don't go out and call it DEI, right, and we're going to have DEI training next Friday. But perhaps the employees know that you're going to continue to promote a diverse workforce. And I do believe that's probably what most employers are doing, are looking at. I think probably at this point anyway, the a smaller percentage are doing away with those programs. But I don't believe that has shown to be too popular with employees.
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah, I've actually seen so many of the companies that they were talking about, Walmart and Target, and so they've actually been impacted in a negative way. They've rolled back a lot of these initiatives. But I think people are still a little bit confused as to what it actually means, not like the actual diversity, not the initials, but more so, how does it impact people? What did DEI actually cover before as an employer? Because there's a difference between, there was a lot of conversation around affirmative action and DEI and it being the same, which it's not. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you can kind of break down, because I think people were really confused as to like, hey, is this affirmative action? Is this DEI? Like, what were the two things? I saw that was a very common question in all the interviews that You're an expert. I'm not. But of all the interviews I was watching,
wanted to make sure we were prepared.
People were really confused as to what affirmative action and DEI really was. So I don't know if you can kind of break down the two.
Well, I think that's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Because that is the confusion.
People are, before this interview, I was like looking up a lot. I was like, wow, this comes up a lot. Like people don't know the difference between affirmative action and DEI.
Right. And there's a difference. So the example I gave, going out and interviewing at more diverse colleges, right, for example, interviewing in different more diverse states or cities, or, I mean, there's things that as an employer can do to try and ensure that they have a more diverse workforce, having mentors. But affirmative action is different. So diversity, equity, inclusion is just making sure that people feel included.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so, for example, some companies may have, an Hispanic group. They may have the
Black History Month.
They may have, the Asian Rim, or whatever it is.
Chinese New Year.
and but they may have different groups within the office.
Right.
But that's not excluding anyone, because anybody could be a member.
Right.
You may have a pride group.
Right.
And people can join the pride group as an ally,
Yeah.
or as a member. It doesn't really matter. Nobody is excluded. There's no
Women's
test to
groups.
get in. I'm a member of our women's liaison group.
Right.
It's the same thing. I mean, so nobody is excluded from joining this group, or you can be an ally. So that's different
Yeah.
than affirmative action.
Right.
Affirmative action is a quota. You could think of it as perhaps a quota
Right.
system. So, for example, in Europe, and I don't know if this is still the case, but it used to be where they have a quota system of having a certain number of women on boards.
Yeah.
They tried to do that in California, and then eventually got rejected. I don't know if it was by their Supreme Court or one of their appellate courts. That if you're a public board, you have to have a certain number, a quota of women on boards. And of course, I think it's a good thing to have more women on boards.
Yeah, because there's barely any women,
right,
like anywhere.
But that's more what you would think of as an affirmative action step. Right. And so they are two distinct things. And I think that's the shame of it is DEI has now been thought of as affirmative action too, that excludes people that are not diverse. And that is not typically what DEI programs are.
Right. So what I found so fascinating is people are having these arguments as if they were basically a quota that everybody needed to meet, when in fact a lot of these programs are really because they wanted women to feel like a part of the conversation, right? Like, how does this impact? I remember when I started Miss Esquire, this is why I thought this is a very interesting topic, is in the legal field, it's predominantly men. Especially when I started the firm I worked at, which was an incredible firm, but everybody I worked for was a male. There wasn't really any women except for women coming in with me. And I started Miss Esquire with the idea of, wouldn't it be incredible to meet other like-minded women that have been doing this longer than I have, right? Which I respect, that have become shareholders like yourself, that have become managing partners, which are few and far between, because I was looking at the dynamic even at the places I was working at, and it was predominantly men. And I couldn't really ask a lot of those questions on like, hey, I'm really glad to hear that you had a mentor that was a male that brought you into the room. But, truth be told, we were not being brought into this conversation. So how can we get these women to collaborate and have these conversations? What I've found is some of the incredible law firms that have seen, hey, maybe women should have conversations with other women that have been able to do it, because it's easier for them to maybe speak to each other than it is for them to go ask a male how they got doors open for them, right? So I felt like that is really, in essence, what these kind of programs were really doing. It's to bring people into the fold that can have conversation with a like-minded community, whether that's your first generation Hispanic, whether you were first generation. I mean, I remember in law school, we were part of first generation, like, students that had never gone to college, never gone to, a doctor program or school. I mean, my parents didn't go to college. So it was great to kind of see how did, these people get to where they are today. And I think that's what DEI really programs are like. And the initiative is so different than taking away jobs, which is what people are having hard, taking away jobs from other people that deserve them based on merit. So there's a lot of confusion, I think, in the two topics. So, Sherril, so with all the new changes in the DEI and rollbacks from this administration, how do you think that would change or affect some of the discriminatory laws? I know there's a recent Supreme Court case regarding the changes. How does it affect, the new?
Well, so the executive order, it can't change existing law, right? But it's can change perhaps interpretation, if you will, which I think has been kind of the effort here. The EEOC, for example, has issued a guidance on DEI and DEI programs, and looking at those. And I think we spoke about that earlier about whether it has a disparate impact. If you have a DEI program, does that have a disparate impact on, let's say, people that are non-diverse, but that are also protected under Title VII, and in the other statutes that are applicable. So that's, I think, some impact that you have there. Obviously, kind of did away in the federal sense with the OCCP, I think it is his office. But with respect to like reverse discrimination, for example, which is kind of where this is all going, right? Is the thought that DEI programs we were talking about, affirmative action, kind of blending those together, and that it is those programs exclude people that are also protected under the federal statute. So there was a Supreme Court case that came out, United States Supreme Court case came out last week, and it was a reverse discrimination case, and it was 9-0, and that's unusual coming
right
nowadays, because you would think anything employment related, whatever, may not be 9-0. This, I do believe, was a 9-0 decision, and it was a reverse discrimination case where the plaintiff, filed a complaint feeling, and I don't know really what the underlying situation was because I haven't fully read the opinion, but that she was discriminated against because she's white. And that went up to the Supreme Court because there was a standard at issue, which is you had to, if it's a reverse discrimination case, you're part of the majority, not the minority,
right,
that you had a higher burden of proof. You had to show background circumstances in addition to what somebody that's in a minority group had to show under the law, which is what we call the McDonnell-Douglas burden shifting, right? And so, which is a lighter burden anyway to show. And that had been the law. And so, at least in some circuits. And so the Supreme Court 9-0 said, no, you don't. If you are a member of the majority and it's reverse discrimination case, you don't have to show a higher burden of proof than somebody in the minority.
So that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
So turning to another hot topic, maybe a sexier one. You hear about artificial intelligence everywhere. I never really thought about how employers would be using AI, but I see that they're using it to recruit candidates, to hire, to interview even. So what have you seen as far as the benefits of that to employers? Then maybe we can talk about the risks.
Yeah.
So yes, AI is one of those. It's kind of like DEI. It's
initials over here.
It's a developing area, and so there are pros and there are cons, and it's as it continues to develop, you always have to look at the risk assessment. So where I see it used is in hiring. So I think that's a good area to talk about, and so there's different platforms you could use that FlySpec, the resumes that come in, so say you're looking for the ideal candidate that has these characteristics, has a college degree and hasn't been out of work more than 6 months. Maybe you're looking for a recent someone with a recent college degree, and so these are the language, if you will, that's put into
like the filters.
The filters, thank you. The filters that is put into the platform. So that all sounds good, but the problem with that is that so if you don't want somebody that has been out of work for more than 6 months, you're probably excluding those that have been pregnant,
true,
or that have a disability,
right?
A recent college grad can exclude people that are older.
Right.
And so, while you had good intentions and no intention to exclude either group, that could have a disparate impact.
Wow, yeah.
And so you have to be very careful as to the type of filters that you put in. And, there's obviously pros to it. Like, for example, there's some employers that can get hundreds and hundreds or thousands of applications on Indeed. And so there's, platforms to put that in and filter. But again, you have to be very careful as to what filters you are putting in.
Right.
Yeah, because that you can be subject to, I'm assuming, a lot of discrimination issues or potential lawsuits because you're leaving a whole group of people that may not have fits the filter.
Right.
I'm just trying to get 4 applicants, so I don't know how that thousands of wow, I need to learn a little bit of AI. Although I will say AI scares the living bejesus out of me. But I mean, I guess it's a like evolving measure that people are taking.
No, I saw. So, do you think that it can also be used to like reduce the unconscious bias as opposed to like?
It can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how is it used for that?
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is that, there's been studies done where based on the well, like taking the resume, taking like
Right.
say two resumes, so a male and a female, right? And they've done these tests and it's, based on, and taken off the name,
Mm-hmm.
but just based on the language, let's say in a resume, who gets selected more often, and it would be the male.
Huh.
And it's an unconscious biasness, perhaps, by those that are making the selection. And so it can, be used to kind of whitewash
Sure.
that unconscious biasness to make sure that you're including that more diverse people are not, one versus the other,
Right.
let's just say,
I
is
think
it's not getting screened out.
this is fascinating because I one time I'm like a big researcher person. Maybe like all attorneys are. But anyways, I was reading on how impactful your name can be in what you do in the future. Like
Exactly. That is what,
and it's part of it, I guess it's because like if you hear a name that you automatically like, you can just get selected based on the fact that somebody, likes your name, which is, or reminds them of something. So it's like when I was naming my kids, I was like, wow, like also longer names versus shorter names. I was like, is this a thing? Like, like it's actually, it's a thing.
They also have to know how to pronounce your name, like Riza.
Riza, my mom, she added an H. But yeah, it's so interesting how like these are biases that you don't even know you have, but that definitely maybe this is why there's a lot of gender neutral names now, like Charlie could be a male or a woman.
Yeah, no, I mean, we shouldn't have to resort to that.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I mean, there are companies who can use this for bad, right? I mean, to kind of, as opposed to like not have a bias, they can do it to actually amplify the bias. I saw Amazon had apparently like used a program to downgrade any resume that talked about women's. So like women's networking group, or I think you said you're the women's liaison, you would be downgraded to promote more of the males to be candidates. I don't know if you saw that, but I was just shocked about it. And apparently that program is over, as you can imagine.
Well, yeah, it's always like what anybody puts into the program, and often there's, it's not a desire to keep people out. I mean it, but it just, if you don't have the right, we go back to the right filters,
Right.
and so what you put in is kind of what you get out. And so again, I think it kind of goes back to, even if you use AI, that you still want to make sure you have HR, that periodically maybe run tests to see what kind of applicants that you're getting.
Now the companies themselves are using outside AI companies, right? So
yeah, sometimes they do. Yeah.
And is that affect like data privacy of these applicants? I mean, if you're relying on another company to run these AI searches, you're putting out these people's names, maybe social security numbers, personal information. I mean, how what's the concerns about privacy, if you know?
Well, if you're using a different company, a third party, to vet your applicants, if you will, I mean, as far as privacy, I think it's like anything else. I mean, you have an agreement,
Right.
obviously a data security agreement. Social security numbers probably should be X'd out.
Right.
Anyway, as if you're filing in court. I mean, if anything's being transferred electronically.
But some of these programs, I mean, they go so far as like, say Raza applies to Littler for, not saying Littler uses AI, but say she applies and Littler uses AI. Some of these
I'm getting the job, obviously.
Obviously.
Go ahead.
But some of these companies like go so far as to like scrub social media, so then they would see like political affiliation.
Although I look at social media all the time, though. I don't know that it's just an AI thing, because I feel like
I don't think
my candidates, I'm like, hold on one second, let me just see what's happening. Just because like, what do you do in your personal time could really affect, or I mean, we do background searches.
Right.
I think
I would say most companies do that. I mean, I can't speak for most companies, but It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It just depends what the practice is to look at public, what is publicly available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it's probably just faster.
True.
It's like it's a faster means to an end because I personally have to go do this. So I feel like it's just a faster way to probably get information on people and be like, red flag. You know, it would be great to use AI on like people you date. You know what I mean? We're going on a different tangent. You know, like just have like,
Are we dating?
red flag, you know? I don't know. So moving on to another hot topic is leave issues. I think there's so much either confusion or, you know, what do you do if maybe an employee doesn't want to come back from potentially a medical leave, or maybe they left for I mean, I use this a lot. I had to go on maternity leave. So what do you do as an employer and employee? What are the rights surrounding around leave issues?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And those issues really came to the forefront in COVID.
Right.
So you had employees that didn't want to come back to work because, then you had masking and unmasking. And, I don't want to come back to work because I have somebody at home that has asthma,
Right.
and they're not enforcing the mask policy, or there's no mask policy. And so you have those issues as well. And so, what do you do in a complicated situation like that is something that was kind of unique to COVID, but they come up a lot and maybe not so complicated. I'll give you like a hypothetical. You have an employee that goes out on leave, say pregnant. So in the Family Medical Leave Act applies. So they exhaust that time. They can't come back for some reason. There's some complication or whatever. So their job is technically not protected because they don't have any more leave. They don't have any, usually PTO and vacation run concurrently with FAMLA. So now what? And can you force the employee to come back to work, or do you fire her in a pregnancy situation? You have Americans with Disabilities Act issues, so you can't be so quick. And it always depends on the employee's position with the company and whether it's an undue burden on the employer. And that's sometimes that's really tough for an employer to show, especially the bigger you are, that you can nominate somebody for a period of time. But now you have the Americans with Disabilities Act that kicks in at the end of that leave. So if the employee says, for example, I need another month, and I can give you a doctor's note, and you could require that as an employer, medical certification as to the need to be out, and so you give them the month, and now it's time to come back, and they still can't come back. They come up with another doctor's note that says my back hurts. So now it moved from pregnancy into complications, and now into something related, but different. So what we get from clients is, when is enough for us to avoid a lawsuit? Like, what exactly, how much time do we need to give somebody? Well, first of all, an open-ended, I'm not sure when I can come back, is not protected under the ADA. That's not a reasonable accommodation. Okay. So you're just required to give reasonable accommodation.
Yeah.
And so that's somewhat, subjective and objective at the same time. So that's an easy one. And so, but what you have to do is you have to continually reach out to the employee, engage in what's called an interactive process. So the law does require that. So if the employee says, I need another month, and you say, nope, then that's not an interactive process. So you have to kind of make sure that you document, you reach out to the employee, and, I need to know when you're going to come back. I need a doctor's note.
Right.
But a lot of times it's kind of this cat and mouse. So I need another 2 weeks. 2 weeks come, you didn't show up. Where are you?
Yeah, right.
Or right on the, 11th, at the 11th hour, I can't come back. Here's another doctor's note. So you have to continually, though, justify why you are ending that relationship. And so the more interactive process you have, the more that you stay on it with the employee and not too quick to end the employment, the better off you're going to be in preventing a lawsuit.
Yeah. Although I will say I had a random question on this subject. So what about
I love random questions. Yeah.
when you're on maternity leave, right? And your employer doesn't stop calling you or asking you to do work while you're on employment, maternity leave. And so it's interesting. I feel like these lines are crossed a lot. Like, is leave actually mean like you've left the building and you are not available? Or does it mean you need to be available and still do pretty much everything you were doing except for maybe working 40 hours a week while you're on maternity leave? Because I feel like those lines are kind of blurred often. I don't know what industry, but definitely in our industry, in the legal industry, those are blurred a lot.
Everything's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there's some stuff to unpack from that too. So if you are an exempt employee, so you're an attorney on leave, okay, that, generally speaking, when you're on leave, there's different types of leaves, right? There's intermittent leave and there's leave taken at the same time. So intermittent would be different, because you're working intermittently.
Oh, sure.
But if you're out for that 3 months, the 12 weeks that it is protected, and if you're, it depends if it's paid or unpaid. So, for example, if it's paid, then and you're exempt anyway, then there's, where's the boundaries, right? Because you're on leave, you're really not supposed to be working,
Right.
right? There's different types of leave though. Family doesn't apply to most small employers. And so it may be a leave that's just gratuitously given by the company, or there may be, a short-term disability policy. And then whether or not, you should be paid for the time. So like if you're not exempt and you're being asked questions, or you're being, you're basically working,
Right.
then theoretically you can ask to be paid, right?
Yeah.
But as far as any sort of prohibition on contacting you, that there's no real prohibition.
Right.
I just know that most employers, if you're out on leave, you're not supposed to be working, and a lot of it centers around pay.
Yeah.
You know what I learned a lot about today, Sherril, is that there's a lot of gray areas in employment.
Yes. I agree.
Which is why people should reach out to someone like you, hopefully proactively, and not whenever they get in trouble.
Right. We like proactive reach outs. I'd say a good percentage of my practice is when somebody does that, when they reach out before there's a lawsuit.
And handbooks and all the things. You guys do that? Do you do handbooks?
Yes.
I didn't realize how important they were until you needed to have guidelines for your employees on different things, because then it shows that you're treating them all based on your handbook and not one person differently than the other. So super important. But if people want to get more information on how to contact you, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, scolombo@littler.com.
Perfect.
You could look me up on the website. I'm in the Miami office.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for color coordinating today, even though it was not planned. We loved hearing more about all of the things that we don't know.
Yes.
So thank you so much. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for also being a sponsor of our podcast. We are grateful that you support and Littler supports Miss Esquire. And for more information about this group, this organization, go ahead and email us admin@missesquire.com. And if you loved our podcast, like and subscribe.
And stay tuned for the next episode.